think that their mutual interests have diverged now between Burhan and the armed forces and Hemeti. What was holding this contestation together has disintegrated, and that has led to them fighting on the streets.
Your reaction to this latest, seemingly quite worrying conflict in the region?
Thanks for having me, Mariella. Yeah, it's hugely worrying. We've seen a couple of days now, very intense fighting between the two armed factions that you mentioned, the Sudanese armed forces and the paramilitary rapid support forces, starting on Saturday. And this has already resulted in nearly 100 people being reported dead and hundreds being caught in the crossfire and injured, and fighting spreading really rapidly throughout the country, from the capital, where there is an intense fighting going on, to the west of the country and the east of the country, where these two armed forces are really contesting and fighting over the control of infrastructure, over each other's facilities and military camps, many of which are in residential areas. So we're seeing a real escalation in this conflict and civilian casualties as a result of that.
Why now? What sparked this off now, and what is at stake more widely?
Well, I think we were at a turning point. There has been a very turbulent transition in Sudan, particularly since 2018. And you mentioned the removal of the former president Omar al-Bashir, ironically at the hands of these two military generals, in part, as well as through protests on the street. And at that stage, there has been a very kind of agreed, tense civilian military partnership. That didn't hold. The military in October 2021, supported by Hemeti himself, staged a coup and removed the civilian element of the government. And there has been a political process ongoing to restore a civilian government in Sudan. Now, we thought we were getting there this month. We thought we would have a civilian government in Sudan that was installed. And then again, as we did previously, we see that the military intervenes to this time fighting against each other. And I think that their mutual interests have diverged now between Burhan and the armed forces and Hemeti. What was holding this contestation together has disintegrated, and that has led to them fighting on the streets. They've become increasingly antagonistic towards each other, both in statement but also in action, and that has led to this fighting. So it has been something that's on the horizon, but actually the fact that these are political stakeholders as well as military stakeholders, they've been part of the bargaining for the new government, really has also sparked this to some extent, because issues like security sector reform have been under their prevail, negotiations over those, and that has been very tense between the army and the rapid support force. They've been in disagreement over how that should move forward, and it really threatens each other's interests and positions. So what we're seeing really is them duking it out now to see who will be the primary armed actor in Sudan.
And Ahmed, does it divide down tribal lines as well? I mean, who supports who, and how much is there a possibility of it becoming a trigger for a wider conflict? With some very important areas bordering Sudan. You've got the Red Sea, you've got the Sahel, you've got Horn of Africa. How wide could this spread?
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point, Mariela. There is a real worry, and we have already seen the regional consequences of this conflict to some extent, in terms of, the border between Ethiopia and Sudan being heavily militarized, in terms of Hemeti's ethnic and tribal interests in the Sahel region, and in being a leader for that broader region, as you say, and also with Egypt's particular interest and relationship with the Sudanese armed forces as well. There are lots of regions. Sudan really sits at the confluence of many different regions, and therefore it is very critical that it remains stable. And as you say, in terms of the Sudanese armed forces, generally they have drawn their leadership from the center of the country, from the riverine areas, whereas the rapid support forces were established primarily from the Darfur region, from the Janjaweed militia, who 20 years ago were instrumentalized in the war in Darfur. So this is really something that was at the that President Bashir built himself, the former dictator, to have these two nodes of power that he could manipulate and use for his own protection.
And of course, the Janjaweed are renowned, feared for terrible atrocities in that region during that time. Are they reformed in any way? I mean, as I understand it, they've been accused of further atrocities more recently in breaking up civilian protests and things, and continuing campaigns of rape and terror. I mean, are there good guys and bad guys here, Ahmed?
No, I think it's very clear that there are bad guys and bad guys. I think we have a situation where Hemeti has asserted that he is supportive of the democratic process and that he is anti-Islamist. Trying to appeal to certain other regional actors, including those in the Gulf states. He's branded his own paramilitary forces as being the defenders of the revolution and the Sudanese people. But as you say, this claim to legitimacy is overstated. The Sudanese haven't forgotten all the atrocities committed by the RSF in Darfur, nor the brutal attacks on protesters' sit-in camp in 2019, which led to the deaths of over 120 people. But they have tried to rehabilitate themselves, and the same goes for SAF. They're not a cohesive force. There are elements of the former regime, of Bashir's regime, who make an important part of this army leadership and have been pushing General Bashir into this action because of the threat that a new dispensation and a reform of the security sector might embolden the rapid support for forces and elevate them within a reformed army, within one national army. So
Yeah.
this contestation really is around that. The heart of it is around that.